I stood in the kitchen of the grand estate. The clatter of pots and the hum of the catering staff swirling around me like a storm I couldn't escape. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the counter, the cold marble biting into my palms. The air was thick with the scent of roasted lamb and rosemary, but it did nothing to mask the bitterness in my chest. My daughter, Emily, my only child, had just ordered Meher Motherto stay in here. Out of sight, like some shameful secret. "It's better this way," she'd said, her voice sharp as a blade, her eyes avoiding mine. "You'll only make things awkward." Awkward. The word echoed in my mind, a cruel summary of the chasm that had grown between us over the years. I was her mother, the woman who'd raised her, sacrificed everything for her. And now I was relegated to the shadows of her perfect day. It wasn't always like this. I remembered Emily as a little girl, her laughter filling our small apartment, her tiny hand clutching mine as we walked to the park. Those days felt like a lifetime ago, before the lies, the betrayals, and the slow poison of resentment seeped into our lives. I had made mistakes, God knows I had, but I never thought they'd lead to this. To my own daughter casting me aside at her wedding, as if I were nothing more than a servant. The kitchen door swung open, and a young caterer glanced at me, her eyes curious but kind. "You okay, ma'am?" she asked. I forced a smile, nodding, but inside, my heart was a furnace of pain and rage. I wasn't okay. I was far from it. But I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. The wedding was in full swing beyond the kitchen walls. I could hear the string quartet playing softly, the murmur of guests, the clink of champagne glasses. Emily's voice floated through, bright and polished, as she greeted her guests. She'd always been good at that, putting on a show, making everyone believe she was flawless. But I knew the truth. I knew the secrets she thought were buried, the ones she'd built her perfect life upon. And I knew the cost of those secrets, the price I'd paid to protect her. My fingers tightened around the letter in my pocket, its edges worn from years of being folded and unfolded. It was my insurance, my weapon, my truth. I hadn't planned to use it, not today. Not ever, but Emily's cold dismissal had changed everything. I stepped toward the door, my heart pounding. The caterer was watching me now, her brow furrowed. "You sure you're all right?" she asked again. This time, I didn't answer. I pushed the door open just enough to glimpse the reception. Emily stood at the center of the garden, radiant in her white gown. Her fiancé, James, beside her. He was handsome, charming, the kind of man who made people feel safe. But I knew better. I knew the kind of man he really was. The guests were all smiles, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. I could stay here, hidden away as Emily wanted, and let her rewrite our history. Or I could step out and reclaim my place, not just in her life, but in the truth. I was never one for confrontation. My life had been about survival, about keeping the peace, even when it meant swallowing my pride. I'd worked 2 jobs to put Emily through school, stayed up nights helping her with homework, and held her when her heart was broken. But somewhere along the way, she turned against me. It started with small things: her rolling her eyes when I spoke, her dismissive tone when I offered advice. Then came the accusations, the blame for every misstep in her life. She said I'd held her back, that my mistakes had tainted her. And James, he'd fanned those flames, whispering in her ear, turning her against me until I was nothing but a shadow in her world. The letter in my pocket felt heavier now, like it was pulling me toward a decision. It was written 20 years ago, by a man who'd once been the center of our lives, Emily's father, Michael. He'd been a good man, flawed but loving, until he wasn't. Until his choices tore our family apart. The letter was his confession, his attempt at redemption before he disappeared. It detailed everything: his lies, his betrayal, and the truth about what he'd done to us. I'd kept it hidden, not to protect him, but to protect Emily. She was too young to understand then, too fragile to carry that weight. But she wasn't a child anymore. She was a woman, about to marry a man who carried the same darkness her father had. And she'd chosen to shame me for it. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. I wasn't going to let her erase me. Not today. Not ever. I pushed the kitchen door open wider, stepping into the hallway that led to the garden. The music grew louder, the laughter sharper. I could feel the eyes of the staff on me, their curiosity a faint hum in the background. They didn't know who I was. Not really. To them, I was just the woman in the plain dress, the one who didn't belong among the glittering guests. But I wasn't here to blend in. I was here to remind Emily and everyone else who I was. The garden was a vision, all soft lights and blooming flowers. But it felt like a stage set for a tragedy. Emily was laughing with a group of friends, her head thrown back, her smile dazzling. James stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his eyes scanning the crowd like a predator. I knew that look. I'd seen it before, in Michael's eyes, right before everything fell apart. My chest tightened, but I kept walking, my steps steady despite the tremor in my hands. The letter was still in my pocket, a ticking bomb waiting to be unleashed. I didn't know if I'd use it yet, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going back to the kitchen. Not now. Not ever. As I approached the edge of the crowd, a few heads turned. Whispers followed, soft at first, then louder. "Who's that?" Someone murmured. "Isn't that Emily's mom?" Another voice asked, tinged with surprise. Emily's laughter faltered, and she turned, her eyes locking onto mine. For a moment, time stopped. Her face shifted from joy to something colder, harder. She excused herself from her friends and strode toward me, her gown trailing like a royal decree. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "I told you to stay in the kitchen." I met her gaze, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "I'm your mother, Emily," I said, "and I'm done hiding." Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear passing through them. She didn't know what I was capable of. Not yet. But she was about to find out. The letter burned in my pocket, its words a silent scream for justice. I could feel the weight of every choice I'd made, every sacrifice, every tear I'd shed for her. And I knew, in that moment, that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for the truth, for the family we'd once been, and for the chance to redeem what we'd lost. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. The crowd was watching now, their murmurs growing into a low hum. I took a step closer, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't get to decide who I am anymore." Emily's face was a storm of emotions: anger, embarrassment, and something deeper, something that looked like guilt. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin, and pulled me toward the edge of the garden, away from the prying eyes of her guests. "This isn't the time, Mom," she said, her voice tight, her eyes darting back to the crowd. You're going to ruin everything. Ruin everything. The words stung, but they also fueled the fire in my chest. I'd spent years tiptoeing around her feelings, shielding her from the truth. But no more. I yanked my arm free, surprising her with the force of it. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore, I said, my voice low but steady. Not after what you've done. She froze, her eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? She asked, but there was a tremor in her voice, a crack in her perfect facade. She knew. Deep down, she knew what I was referring to, even if she'd buried it under years of denial. I could see it in the way her shoulders tensed, the way her hands clenched into fists. The letter in my pocket felt like a living thing, pulsing with the weight of the past. I hadn't decided if I'd reveal its contents tonight, but the mere thought of it gave me power I hadn't felt in years. Go back to the kitchen, Emily said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Please, Mom, don't make a scene. A scene. That's what she was worried about. Not the truth, not our fractured bond, but the optics of her perfect wedding. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not my little girl, but a woman who'd chosen to rewrite our history to suit her narrative. She'd painted me as the villain, the negligent mother who'd failed her, while she played the role of the wrong daughter. But I wasn't the only one who'd made mistakes, and I wasn't the only one hiding something. I took a step back, my eyes never leaving hers. You think you can erase me, Emily? I asked, my voice calm but laced with steel. You think you can pretend I don't exist, that I didn't give you everything? Her lips parted, but no words came. The crowd was starting to notice us now, their murmurs growing louder. James appeared at her side, his smile tight, his eyes cold. Everything okay here? He asked, his tone smooth, but with an edge that set my nerves on fire. I knew that tone. I'd heard it before, from another man who'd promised to love us and then destroyed us. Everything's fine, Emily said quickly, her hand on his arm, her smile forced. But James wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, his gaze calculating, like he was sizing me up. I held his stare, refusing to flinch. I'd spent too many years cowering, too many years letting men like him dictate my worth. Not anymore. I was just leaving, I said, but my voice carried a promise that this wasn't over. I turned and walked back toward the house, not because I was retreating, but because I needed space to think, to plan my next move. Inside, the kitchen was quieter now, the catering staff moving with practiced efficiency. I leaned against the counter, my heart racing. The letter was still in my pocket, its words etched into my memory. Michael's confession, his betrayal, the truth about what he'd done to our family. I'd kept it hidden for so long, not just to protect Emily, but to protect myself from the shame of it all. I'd been young, naive, in love with a man who'd promised me the world and then left me with nothing but lies. But Emily didn't know the full story. She thought I'd driven him away, that my weakness had broken our family. She didn't know the truth about her father, or about James. I pulled the letter out, my hands birching it open. The paper was yellowed with age. The ink faded but still legible. Michael's handwriting was small and cramped, the words spilling out like a fevered confession. He'd written it the night he left, a desperate attempt to explain himself, He'd been involved in something illegal, something that had put us all in danger. He'd run to protect us, he said, but I knew better. He'd run to save himself. The letter detailed everything: the deals he'd made, the people he'd crossed, the money he'd stolen, and the worst part, the betrayal that had shattered my trust forever. I'd never told Emily. I'd wanted her to remember her father as a good man, flawed but loving. But now, standing in this kitchen, I wondered if that had been a mistake. The door swung open, and Emily's best friend, Sarah, slipped inside. She was a kind woman, always warm to me, even when Emily wasn't. "Hey," she said softly, her eyes searching my face. "You okay?" I nodded, tucking the letter back into my pocket. "Just needed a moment," I said. She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Emily's being difficult," she said carefully. "But you know how she gets when she's stressed." I laughed, a bitter sound. "Stressed? She's the bride. She's supposed to be happy." Sarah sighed, her expression sympathetic. "She's scared, I think. This is a big day. And, well, you know how things have been between you two." I didn't know. I knew every barbed word, every cold glance, every moment of rejection. But I also knew that Emily's version of the truth was built on lies I'd let her believe to protect her. Sarah touched my arm. "She loves you. You know. She just doesn't know how to show it." I looked away, my throat tight. "She's ashamed of me," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Sarah shook her head. "She's not. She's just lost. Give her time." Time. I'd given her 25 years. How much more time did she need? Sarah left, and I was alone again, the letter burning a hole in my pocket. I thought about James, about the way he'd looked at me, the same way Michael used to look at me when he was hiding something. I'd done my research on him, quietly, over the months leading up to the wedding. He was charming, successful, but there were whispers, rumors of shady business dealings, of people who'd crossed him and paid the price. Emily didn't see it. She was blinded by love, just like I'd been. But I wasn't blind anymore. I knew the kind of man he was, and I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. I walked back to the hallway, my steps purposeful now. The music was louder, the party in full swing. I caught a glimpse of Emily and James dancing, their bodies pressed close, her smile radiant. My heart ached, but it was a different kind of ache now, one fueled by determination. I wasn't going to let her marry a man like her father. I wasn't going to let her live a lie. The letter was my weapon, but it wasn't enough. I needed to expose James, to show her the truth before it was too late. I didn't know how I'd do it yet, but I knew I had to try. For her. For us. As I stepped back into the garden, the crowd seemed to part, their eyes on me. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but I didn't care. I was done hiding. Emily saw me and froze, her smile fading. James whispered something in her ear, and she nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. I could feel the weight of the moment, the precipice we were standing on. This was a moment that would define us. I took a deep breath, my hand closing around the letter. "Emily," I said, my voice carrying across the garden. "We need to talk." The garden fell silent. Or maybe it was just the blood rushing in my ears, drowning out the world. Emily's eyes widened. a flicker of panic crossing her face before it hardened into defiance. "Not now, Mom," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She stepped away from James, her gown swishing as she moved toward me, her posture rigid with control. The guests were watching, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort, like spectators at a car crash. James followed her, his hand on her elbow, his smile tight but practiced. "Let's not make a scene," he said, his tone smooth, almost too smooth, like oil sliding over a blade. I ignored him, my focus locked on Emily. "This can't wait," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You need to hear this." Emily's lips pressed into a thin line, and she crossed her arms, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said, her voice low but venomous. "Go back inside." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I'd taken worse from her over the years, her cold silences, her biting remarks, her slow erasure of me from her life. But this was different. This was public, deliberate, a final rejection. I could feel the letter in my pocket, its weight anchoring me to the truth. I wasn't going to let her dismiss me. Not this time. "Emily," I said, stepping closer, my voice softer now, almost pleading. "You don't understand what's at stake here." Her eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there too, fear. Maybe. Or doubt. She opened her mouth to speak, but James cut in, his voice calm but commanding. "Mrs. Carter, this is Emily's day. Let's not spoil it. Mrs. Carter." The formality was a jab, a reminder of my placer lack of it in their world. I turned to him, meeting his gaze head on. His eyes were cold, calculating, just like Michael's had been. I knew that look too well, the look of a man who thought he could control everything. But I wasn't the naive girl I'd been back then. "You don't get to decide that," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and I felt their eyes on me, judging, whispering. I didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about my daughter, about saving her from a mistake I'd made years ago. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing the letter, but I didn't pull it out. Not yet. I needed her to listen first, to hear me, not just the words on a page. "Emily, I know you think I failed you," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I know you blame me for everything that went wrong. But there are things you don't know, things I've protected you from." Her face softened for a fraction of a second, but then the mask was back, hard and unyielding. "You're delusional," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "You always have been. You think you can just show up here and play the victim." The words cut deep, but I pressed on. "I'm not the victim here," I said, "but you will be if you don't listen to me." James stepped forward, his hand tightening on Emily's arm. "That's enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're upsetting her." I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the silence. "Upsetting her? You have no idea what you're doing to her." The crowd was buzzing now, their whispers like a swarm of bees. Emily's face was pale, her eyes darting between me and James. I could see the conflict in her, the part of her that still loved me fighting against the part that had learned to hate me. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Your father wasn't who you think he was, I said. And neither is James. Her eyes widened. And for a moment, I thought I'd reached her. But then she stepped back, her expression hardening. Don't you dare talk about my father, she said, her voice shaking. And don't you dare talk about James. You don't know him. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see the truth. But I knew it wouldn't work not like this. Not in front of everyone. I needed proof. Something undeniable. The letter was my only card. But using it would mean destroying the image she had of her father. The one I'd carefully preserved all these years. I hesitated. My hand frozen in my pocket. James was watching me now. His eyes narrowed. Like he knew I was a threat. He leaned in, whispering something to Emily. And her face softened. Her resolve strengthening. Go, she said. Her voice cold. I don't want you here. The words were a knife to my heart. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I'd spent too many years running from the truth, hiding it to protect her, and it had only driven us further apart. I looked at her, my beautiful, stubborn daughter, and I made a decision. I'm not leaving, I said, my voice firm. Not until you hear me out. The crowd gasped, and Emily's eyes filled with tears, anger, shame, or something else. I couldn't tell. James stepped between us, his posture protective, but I saw the truth in his eyes. He was scared. Scared of what I knew, what I could reveal. Fine, Emily said, her voice breaking. You want to do this? Let's do it. But not here. She turned and walked toward the house, her gown trailing behind her like a ghost. James followed, throwing me a warning glance over his shoulder. I followed them, my heart pounding, the letter a heavy weight in my pocket. The guests parted as we passed, their whispers following us like a shadow. Inside, we went to a small study off the main hall, the walls lined with books and the air heavy with the scent of old leather. Emily closed the door behind us, her hands shaking. Say what you have to say, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, my hand closing around the letter. This isn't about me, I said. It's about you. And him. I glanced at James, who stood by the window, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He's not who you think he is, Emily. He's dangerous. She laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You're unbelievable, she said. You're jealous, aren't you? Because I have someone who loves me. And you're alone. The words hurt, but I didn't let them stop me. I'm not jealous, I said. I'm terrified. For you. I pulled the letter out, holding it up but not opening it. This is about your father, I said, and what he did to us. And I'm afraid James is going to do the same to you. Emily's face went pale, and James took a step forward. His eyes locked on the letter. What is that? He asked, his voice low. Dangerous. I met his gaze, my heart steady now. The truth, I said. And you're not going to like it. The room was silent, the air thick with tension. Emily stared at the letter, her expression unreadable. I could see the doubt creeping in, the crack in her armor. She reached for it, her hand trembling. But James grabbed her wrist. Don't, he said, his voice sharp. She's manipulating you. I smiled. A sad, knowing smile. Am I? I asked. Or are you the one manipulating her? The air in the study was suffocating, the silence stretching taut like a wire about to snap. Emily's hand hovered in midair, caught between reaching for the letter and James's grip on her wrist. Her eyes darted from me to him, searching for something to hold on to, something to make sense of the chaos I'd just unleashed. I stood still, the letter in my hand, its weight a reminder of the years I'd carried its burden alone. James's face was a mask of calm, but his eyes betrayed him sharp, calculating, like a predator cornered. Emily, he said, his voice soft but edged with warning. You don't need to see that. She's trying to hurt you. I laughed. A low, bitter sound. Hurt her. I said. I've spent my life protecting her. From you. From him. I nodded at the letter, the ghost of Michael looming between us. Emily yanked her hand free, her eyes blazing. Stop it, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep dragging Dad into your mess. Her words were a punch to the gut, but I held my ground. Your father wasn't a saint. Emily, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. And neither is James. You need to know the truth. She shook her head, her hands clenched into fists. The truth. Your truth. You've always blamed him for everything. For leaving us. For ruining your life. But maybe he left because of you. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and cruel. But I didn't flinch. I'd heard it before. In her teenage rants. In her cold silences. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I held up the letter, my hand steady. This isn't my truth, I said. It's his. Your father wrote this before he left. It's his confession. Emily's face went pale. Her eyes locked on the letter like it was a bomb about to detonate. James stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. Don't do this, Ellen, he said, using my first name for the first time. The familiarity was a calculated move, a way to disarm me, but it only fueled my resolve. You don't get to tell me what to do, I said, my voice cold. Not when it comes to my daughter. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. I could see the battle raging inside her, the need to believe in the father she'd idolized, the man she'd placed on a pedestal, versus the doubt I'd planted. Give it to me, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Once she read it, there was no going back. The image of her father, flawed but loving, would be shattered forever. But I couldn't protect her from the truth any longer. I handed her the letter, my fingers brushing hers for a moment. A fleeting connection that broke my heart. She took it, her hands trembling, and unfolded the paper. James moved to her side, his hand on her shoulder. His eyes locked on me. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. I ignored him, watching Emily as she began to read. Her eyes moved over the words, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to something deeper, something raw. I knew what she was reading: Michael's confession of his crimes, his betrayal, the way he'd put us in danger to save himself. The words were seared into my memory. I'm sorry, Ellen. I never meant for it to go this far. The money was supposed to be for us, for Emily's future. But I got in too deep. I have to leave, or they'll come for you both. Emily's hands shook, the paper crinkling in her grip. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, her voice barely audible. Is this true? She asked. I nodded, my throat tight. Every word. James's face darkened, and he snatched the letter from her hands, scanning it quickly. This is nonsense, he said, his voice sharp. It's a fabrication. She's trying to tear us apart. But Emily wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, her eyes searching mine for answers. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice breaking. All these years. You let me think. She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. I took a step toward her, but she backed away, shaking her head. You lied to me, she said. You let me hate you. I didn't lie, I said, my voice soft but firm. I protected you. You were a child. You didn't need to know your father was a criminal. You needed to love him, to believe in him. My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. I thought I was doing the right thing. Emily's face crumpled, and she sank into a chair, the letter falling to the floor. James picked it up, his eyes scanning it again, his jaw tight. This proves nothing, he said, but there was a crack in his confidence, a slight tremor in his voice. I turned to him, my anger flaring. It proves everything, I said. And I know you're no different. I've seen the reports. James. The shady deals. The people who disappear when they cross you. Emily deserves better. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice rising. I took a deep breath, knowing I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I've been watching him, I said. For months. There are rumors, lawsuits that vanish. Witnesses who change their stories. He's not who he says he is. James laughed. A cold, hollow sound. You're desperate, he said. You'll say anything to ruin this. But Emily wasn't laughing. She was staring at him, her eyes searching his face for the truth. James, she said, her voice small, uncertain. He turned to her, his expression softening, but I could see the effort it took. She's lying. He said, his voice smooth as silk. She's trying to control you, just like she always has. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. I'm not the one controlling her, I said. You are. You've turned her against me, made her think I'm the enemy. But I'm her mother, and I'll do anything to protect her. Emily's eyes darted between us, her face a mask of confusion and pain. Stop it, she said, her voice breaking. Both of you. Just stop. The room was silent, the air heavy with the weight of our words. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her, to take back the years of pain and misunderstanding. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. She needed to process this, to face the truth about her father, about James, about me. I looked at the letter on the floor, its words a silent witness to our fractured family. I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I should have told you sooner. Emily didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the floor, tears streaming down her face. James stepped toward me, his eyes blazing. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low and threatening. I met his gaze, unafraid. No, I said. You will. Emily sat there, her face buried in her hands, the weight of the letter's revelations crushing her. The study felt smaller now, the walls closing in as the truth hung between us like a storm cloud. James stood by the window, his back to us, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched into fists. He was cornered, and he knew it. I wanted to go to Emily, to wrap my arms around her and tell her everything would be okay. But I knew she wouldn't let me. Not yet. The letter lay on the floor, its words a silent accusation, a bridge between the past and the present. I'd kept it hidden for so long, thinking I was protecting her, but all I'd done was build a wall between us. Emily, I said softly, taking a cautious step toward her. I know this is hard. I know you're angry. But I did it because I love you. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. Love, she said, her voice raw. You call this love? You let me believe a lie my whole life. You let me think Dad was a hero, that you were the reason he left. Her words were a knife, twisting in my chest, but I didn't look away. I was wrong, I said. I thought I was protecting you. I thought you needed to believe in him. But I was wrong, and I'm sorry. James turned, his face a mask of controlled fury. This is pathetic, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. You're using a piece of paper to manipulate her, to drive a wedge between us. It won't work. I met his gaze, my own anger rising. It's not about you, I said. It's about her. She deserves to know who she's marrying. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. What are you saying? She asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, knowing I was about to cross another line. I've been looking into James, I said. There are things you don't know. Things he's hiding. James laughed. A cold, brittle sound. You're insane, he said. You think you can dig up some dirt and ruin my life. You have nothing. But I could see the fear in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. He wasn't as confident as he wanted to appear. I turned to Emily, my voice steady. There are lawsuits, I said. People who've accused him of fraud, intimidation. They disappear, or they settle, or they suddenly change their stories. Doesn't that sound familiar? I glanced at the letter on the floor. The connection clear. Michael had done the same, manipulated, lied, and ran when it got too hot. Emily's eyes followed mine, and I saw the doubt creeping in, the crack in her trust. Emily, don't listen to her, James said, his voice urgent now. He stepped toward her, his hand outstretched, but she flinched away, her body curling in on itself. She's lying, he said. She's always been jealous of you, of us. She can't stand to see you happy. Emily's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger and uncertainty. Vulnerability. A flicker of the little girl who used to run to me for comfort. Is it true? She asked, her voice barely audible. I hesitated, my heart breaking for her. I don't have all the proof yet, I said. But I know enough. And I know he's not good for you. James slammed his hand on the desk, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Enough, he shouted. This is slander. I'll sue you for this. I didn't flinch. Go ahead, I said. But the truth will come out. It always does. Emily stood, her gown rustling, her face a mask of pain. I can't do this, she said, her voice breaking. She looked at James, then at me, her eyes filled with tears. I need to think. She pushed past us, her hands clutching the sides of her dress, and ran out of the room. The door slammed behind her, leaving James and me alone. He turned on me, his eyes blazing. You've gone too far, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You think you can destroy me. You're nothing. A washed-up woman with a grudge. I stepped closer, unafraid. I'm her mother, I said, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect her. Even from you. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might hit me. But he didn't. He turned and stormed out, leaving the letter on the floor, a silent testament to the truth. I sank into a chair, my body trembling with the weight of what had just happened. I'd done it. I'd told her the truth about her father, about James. But at what cost? I could still see her face, the pain in her eyes, the betrayal. I'd wanted to save her, but I'd hurt her in the process. The door opened, and Sarah stepped inside, her face pale. What happened? She asked, her eyes wide. I shook my head, unable to speak. She knelt beside me, picking up the letter. Is this it? She asked. I nodded, my throat tight. She knows now, I said. She knows everything. Sarah read the letter quickly, her expression darkening. Oh, Ellen, she said, her voice soft. Why didn't you tell her sooner? I looked away, my eyes burning. I thought I was protecting her, I said. But I was wrong. Sarah touched my hand, her grip warm and steady. She's strong, she said. She'll get through this. And she'll forgive you. I wanted to believe her, but the doubt was a heavy weight in my chest. I'd spent years hiding the truth, thinking it was the right thing to do. But all I'd done was push her away. I stood, my resolve hardening. I need to find her, I said. I need to make this right. Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. Go, she said. She needs you now more than ever. I left the study, my heart pounding, the letter left behind on the floor. The garden was still alive with music and laughter, but it felt distant, like a world I no longer belonged to. I scanned the crowd, searching for Emily, my heart aching with the need to hold her, to tell her I loved her, to beg for her forgiveness. But she was gone, and the fear that I'd lost her forever gripped me like a vice. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the whispers, the curious glances. I didn't care what they thought. I only cared about her. I found her outside, near the fountain, her gown glowing in the moonlight, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I approached slowly, my heart in my throat. Emily, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't turn, but her sobs quieted, and I knew she was listening. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. She turned then, her face streaked with tears, her eyes filled with pain. Why didn't you tell me? She asked again, her voice raw. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. Because I loved you, I said. And I was afraid you'd hate me. Emily's eyes searched mine, the moonlight casting shadows across her tear-streaked face. The fountain bubbled softly behind her, a stark contrast to the storm raging between us. I wanted to reach out, to pull her into my arms like I used to when she was a child. But the distance between us felt like an ocean. Hate you, she said, her voice cracking. Mom, I've spent years trying to understand you, trying to figure out why you pushed me away. And now you're telling me it was all a lie. Her words were a raw wound, exposing the pain I'd caused by keeping the truth from her. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I didn't push you away, I said. I was trying to protect you. I thought if you knew about your father, it would break you. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Break me. You broke me by lying. You let me think you were the reason he left, that you weren't good enough. I blamed you for everything. Her voice rose, trembling with years of pent-up anger. I felt the weight of every choice I'd made, every moment I'd chosen silence over truth. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong. Emily, I'm so sorry. She shook her head, turning away, her hands clutching the sides of her gown. Sorry doesn't fix this, she said. You can't just say sorry and make it all go away. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. I'm not trying to make it go away, I said. I'm trying to make it right. I should have told you about your father years ago. I should have trusted you to handle it. But I was scared. She turned back, her eyes blazing. Scared of what? That I'd hate you. Or that I'd see you for who you really are. The words cut deep. But I didn't back down. Scared that you'd lose the father you loved, I said. He wasn't perfect, Emily. He made terrible mistakes. But he loved you. I wanted you to hold on to that. She stared at me, her chest heaving, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and grief. And James? She asked, her voice barely audible. Is that true too? Are you just trying to ruin my life? I hesitated, knowing how delicate this moment was. I don't want to ruin your life, I said. I want to save it. James isn't who he seems. I've seen the patterns before. With your father. The charm. The lies. The way he controls everything. I can't let you make the same mistake I did. Her face crumpled, and she sank onto the edge of the fountain, her hands covering her face. I love him, she whispered. He's been there for me when you weren't. The words were a dagger, but I knelt beside her, my heart breaking. I know I haven't been the mother you needed, I said. I was so caught up in my own pain, my own guilt, that I failed you. But I'm here now, and I'm telling you the truth because I love you. She looked up, her eyes searching mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt not about me, but about James. Before she could respond, James appeared, his silhouette dark against the garden lights. Emily, he said, his voice smooth but urgent. You don't have to listen to this. She's trying to tear us apart. I stood, facing him, my anger flaring. I'm trying to protect her, I said. Something you'll never understand. His eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, his voice low. You're making a big mistake. Ellen, you don't know who you're dealing with. I didn't flinch. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. I said, a man who thinks he can control everyone around him. But not my daughter. Not anymore. Emily stood, her eyes darting between us, her hands trembling. Stop, she said, her voice breaking. Just stop. I can't do this right now. She turned and ran toward the house, her gown trailing behind her like a ghost. I started to follow, but James grabbed my arm, his grip tight. You'll pay for this, he said, his voice a low growl. I yanked my arm free, meeting his gaze. No, I said. You will. The truth always comes out. He stared at me, his eyes blazing with fury. But he didn't follow as I walked away, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. I found Emily inside, in a quiet corner of the hallway, her back against the wall, her face buried in her hands. I approached slowly, my heart aching. Emily, I said softly. I'm here. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. I don't know what to believe anymore, she said, her voice raw. I thought I knew you. I thought I knew him. I knelt beside her, my hand hovering near hers, unsure if she'd pull away. I know I've hurt you, I said, but I'm telling you the truth now. About your father. About James. I just want you to be safe. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Safe? You think this is safe? You just turned my world upside down. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I know, I said, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. But you need to know who James is. He's not what he seems. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and I saw the flicker of fear, the fear that I was right. What do I do now? She asked, her voice small, like a child's. I took her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. We figure it out together, I said. You're not alone. The hallway was quiet, the sounds of the wedding distant, like a memory fading. I held her hand, feeling the weight of years of silence, of mistakes, of love. I didn't know if she'd forgive me, but for the first time, I felt hope that we could rebuild, that we could find our way back to each other. I love you, Emily, I said, my voice breaking. I always have. She didn't respond, but her grip tightened on my hand. A small, fragile connection. It was enough. For now, it was enough. I stood, helping her to her feet, my heart heavy but resolute. Let's go somewhere quiet, I said. We need to talk. Just you and me. She nodded, her eyes still filled with tears. But there was a spark of something new, trust. Maybe. Or the beginning of it. We walked down the hallway, away from the music, away from the crowd, away from James. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I'd fight for her, no matter what. The letter had been the first step, the breaking of a dam. Now, it was time to rebuild, to heal, to find our way back to each other. We found a small sitting room at the end of the hallway, its walls adorned with faded paintings and a single lamp casting a soft glow. Emily sank onto a velvet sofa, her gown pooling around her like a fallen cloud. I closed the door behind us, shutting out the distant hum of the wedding, and sat beside her, leaving a careful distance. Her hands were folded in her lap, her fingers twisting the engagement ring on her finger. the diamond catching the light. She didn't look at me, but I could feel the weight of her presence. The years of pain and misunderstanding hanging between us like a fog. I don't know where to start, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Everything I thought I knew, it's gone. I leaned forward, my hands clasped tightly to keep them from trembling. I know it feels like that, I said, and I know I'm to blame for a lot of it. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong. I should have trusted you with the truth about your father. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp with pain. You let me think he was perfect, she said. You let me think he left because of you. The accusation was softer now, but it still stung. I nodded, my throat tight. I did, I said. I thought it would be easier for you to love him if you didn't know. He loved you, Emily. He wasn't a good man, but he loved you. I didn't want to take that away. She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. You took away my chance to understand, she said. I spent my whole life angry at you, thinking you drove him away. And now you're telling me he was a criminal, that he left to save himself. Her voice broke, and she looked away, her shoulders trembling. I wanted to reach for her, but I held back, afraid of pushing her too far. I was wrong, I said again. I was young, scared, and ashamed. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I hurt you instead. I'll never forgive myself for that. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine, and I saw the little girl she used to beta, one who'd climb into my lap and ask for stories. The one who trusted me with everything. And James? She asked, her voice small. Is it true, what you said about him? My heart clenched. This was the hardest part. The part one wasn't sure she was ready for. I don't have hard proof yet, I admitted. But I've heard enough, seen enough to know he's not what he seems. There are lawsuits, Emily. People who've accused him of things that sound too much like what your father did. She flinched, her hands tightening in her lap. He loves me, she said, but her voice lacked conviction, like she was trying to convince herself. I know you love him, I said gently. And I know it's hard to hear this, but I've seen men like him before. Men who charm, who control, who hide their true selves until it's too late. I can't let that happen to you. She looked down at her ring, her fingers trembling. What if you're wrong? She asked, her voice barely audible. What if he's different? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I hope I'm wrong, I said. But I can't take that chance. Not with you. I've lost too much already. The door burst open, and James stood there, his face flushed with anger. Emily, he said, his voice tight. We need to talk. Alone. I stood, my heart racing. But Emily held up a hand, stopping us both. No, she said, her voice stronger now. I need to hear this. All of it. James's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward, his posture menacing. She's poisoning you against me, he said. She's jealous, Emily. She can't stand to see you happy. I stepped between them, my voice calm but firm. I'm not jealous, I said. I'm her mother, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect her. Emily stood, her eyes darting between us, her face pale but resolute. James, she said, her voice trembling but steady. I need to know the truth. About you. About everything. His face softened, but I saw the calculation in his eyes, the way he adjusted his mask. Of course, sweetheart, he said, his voice smooth. I have nothing to hide. But I knew better. I'd seen that look before. In Michael's eyes. Right before he disappeared. I turned to Emily, my heart in my throat. You don't have to decide now, I said. But you need to ask questions. You need to see him for who he really is. James laughed. A cold, dismissive sound. You're pathetic, he said to me. You think you can scare her with your lies. You're nothing. But Emily didn't laugh. She looked at him, her eyes narrowing, and I saw the spark of doubt, the beginning of a question. James, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I need to see those lawsuits. I need to know. His smile faltered, just for a moment, but it was enough. I knew I'd struck a nerve. He recovered quickly, his voice smooth again. Of course, he said. Anything you want. But you don't need to listen to her. He glared at me, his eyes promising retribution. Emily turned to me, her expression unreadable. I don't know what to believe, she said. But I need time. I nodded, my heart aching but hopeful. Take all the time you need, I said. I'll be here. She looked at me, her eyes softening. And for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of connection, a bridge we could rebuild. James stepped forward, his hand on her arm. But she pulled away, her eyes fixed on mine. I need to be alone, she said, her voice breaking. She walked out, leaving James and me in the room, the air crackling with tension. He turned on me, his voice low and dangerous. You've made a big mistake, he said. I'll destroy you for this. I met his gaze, unafraid. Try, I said. But the truth is on my side. He stormed out, and I sank onto the sofa, my body trembling with the weight of what I'd done. I'd exposed the truth, but at what cost? Emily was hurting, and I didn't know if she'd ever forgive me. But I'd done it for her, for us, for the chance to heal. I closed my eyes, praying for strength, for redemption, for the daughter I'd lost and found again. I sat alone in the sitting room, the silence heavy with the echoes of our confrontation. The lamp flickered, casting long shadows across the faded paintings, and I felt the weight of the years pressing down on me. I'd done what I thought was impossible, revealed the truth about Michael, about James, about the lies that had defined our lives. But the cost was etched in Emily's tear-streaked face, her trembling voice, her doubt. I'd wanted to save her, to protect her, but I'd shattered her world instead. My hands shook as I clasped them together, the memory of her grip on my hand lingering like a fragile hope. I didn't know if she'd forgive me, but I knew I'd fight for it, no matter how long it took. The door creaked open, and Sarah stepped inside, her face etched with concern. Ellen, she said softly, closing the door behind her. Are you okay? I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. I don't know, I said. I did what I had to do, but I don't know if she'll ever speak to me again. Sarah sat beside me, her hand resting on mine. She will, she said. She's hurt, but she loves you. She just needs time to process this. I looked at her, my throat tight. I've given her years. I said. What if it's not enough? Sarah squeezed my hand, her eyes steady. It will be, she said. You're her mother. That bond doesn't break, no matter how hard it gets. I wanted to believe her, but the doubt was a heavy weight in my chest. I'd spent so long hiding the truth, thinking I was protecting Emily, only to realize I'd been protecting myself from the shame of my own mistakes. I should have told her about Michael years ago, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was sparing her pain, but I just made it worse. Sarah nodded, her expression soft. You did what you thought was right, she said. That's what mothers do. They make hard choices, and sometimes they're wrong, but they keep fighting. I looked away, my eyes burning. I'm tired of fighting, I said. I just want my daughter back. Sarah's grip tightened, and she leaned closer. You haven't lost her, she said. She's out there, hurting, but she's still yours. Go to her. Keep showing up. I nodded, her words sinking in, giving me a flicker of strength. I stood, smoothing my dress, my resolve hardening. You're right, I said. I need to find her. Sarah smiled, a small, encouraging smile. Go, she said. I'll handle things here. I left the room, my heart pounding as I stepped back into the hallway. The wedding was still in full swing, the music and laughter a stark contrast to the storm inside me. I scanned the crowd, searching for Emily, my eyes lingering on the faces of strangers who had no idea what had just happened. I saw James across the garden, talking to a group of men, his smile tight, his eyes scanning the crowd. He was looking for her, too, I realized, and the thought sent a chill down my spine. I had to find her first. I moved through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances, the whispered questions. I didn't care what they thought. I only cared about her. I found her in the rose garden, sitting on a stone bench, her gown glowing in the moonlight. She was staring at the ground, her hands clasped tightly, her shoulders slumped. I approached slowly, my heart in my throat. Emily, I said softly, sitting beside her. She didn't look up, but she didn't pull away, either. I don't know what to say, she said, her voice raw. I don't know who to trust anymore. I nodded, my chest aching. I know, I said. I broke your trust. I lied to you for years. But I'm here now, and I'm telling you the truth. I just want you to be safe, to be happy. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. Happy, she said, her voice breaking. How am I supposed to be happy when everything I believed was a lie? I reached for her hand, and this time, she let me take it. Not everything was a lie, I said. I love you. That's always been true. And I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Her eyes softened, but the pain was still there, raw and deep. And James? She asked, her voice trembling. What if you're right about him? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Then you'll know, I said. And you'll be strong enough to walk away. I know you are. She pulled her hand away, her eyes searching the darkness. I don't know if I can, she said. I love him. My heart broke for her, but I kept my voice steady. I know, I said. But love isn't enough if it's built on lies. You deserve better. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. I need to find out for myself, she said. I nodded, my throat tight. I know, I said. But I'll be here, no matter what you decide. She didn't respond, but her silence was softer now, less hostile, and I clung to that small hope. We sat in silence for a moment, the roses fragrant around us, the night air cool against my skin. I felt the weight of the years, the mistakes, the love that had never wavered. I'm sorry, I said again, my voice breaking. For everything. She looked at me, her eyes glistening with tears. I know, she said softly. I need time. I nodded, my heart aching but hopeful. Take all the time you need, I said. I'll wait. She didn't smile, but her eyes held mine for a moment. And it was enough. For now, it was enough. The rose garden was quiet, save for the distant hum of the wedding. A world that felt far removed from the fragile moment between Emily and me. She sat beside me, her hands twisting in her lap, her face a map of conflicting emotions: grief, anger, doubt, and something softer, something that gave me hope. I wanted to say more, to fill the silence with apologies, explanations, promises. But I knew she needed space to breathe, to think. The truth about her father had shattered her, and my warnings about James had cracked the foundation of her future. I'd done what I thought was right, but the cost was written in her eyes, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever earn her trust again. I don't know how to do this, she said finally, her voice barely audible, her eyes fixed on the roses glowing in the moonlight. I don't know how to look at you and not feel betrayed. The words were a quiet blade, slicing through the fragile hope I'd been clinging to. I nodded, my throat tight. I know, I said. I betrayed you by keeping the truth from you. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and I saw the weight of her pain, the years of misunderstanding I'd let fester. What was he like? She asked suddenly, her voice trembling. Dad. Before it all went wrong. The question caught me off guard, and I felt a pang of grief for the man I'd once loved, the man who'd broken us both. He was charming, I said, my voice soft. Funny, kind, always knew how to make you laugh. He loved you so much, Emily. He'd carry you on his shoulders, tell you stories about the stars. But he was weak, too. He made bad choices, got in too deep, and he didn't know how to get out. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, her hands trembling. I wish I'd known, she said. I wish you'd told me. I reached for her hand, and to my surprise, she didn't pull away. I wish I had, too, I said. I was afraid of losing you. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd hate me for it. She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. I hated you for other reasons, she said, her voice raw. For being distant, for shutting me out, for letting me think you didn't care. The words were a confession, a wound laid bare, and I felt the weight of my failures as a mother. I cared, I said, my voice breaking. I cared so much. I just didn't know how to show it. I was broken, too. She looked at me, her eyes softening. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding. A bridge we could cross. And James? She asked, her voice hesitant. What do I do about him? My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. You find out the truth, I said. Ask questions. Look at the lawsuits, the rumors. If he's honest, he'll have nothing to hide. If he's not, I trailed off, letting her fill in the blanks. She nodded, her expression resolute but fragile. I will, she said. But I'm scared. I squeezed her hand, my heart aching. I know, I said. But you're strong. Stronger than I ever was. And I'll be here, no matter what. The sound of footsteps broke the moment, and James appeared at the edge of the garden, his silhouette sharp against the fairy lights. Emily, he said, his voice smooth but strained. We need to talk. She stiffened, her hand slipping from mine. But she didn't stand. Not now, she said, her voice firm. I need time. His eyes narrowed, and he glanced at me, his expression dark with warning. She's manipulating you, he said. She's trying to ruin us. Emily stood, her gown rustling, her eyes blazing with a strength I hadn't seen before. No, she said. She's my mother, and I need to know the truth. James's face tightened, but he didn't move. I stood beside Emily, my heart pounding with pride and fear. You heard her, I said, my voice steady. She needs time. Respect that. He laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. You think you've won, he said to me. You're nothing but a bitter woman with a vendetta. Emily will see through you. But Emily stepped forward, her voice cutting through the night. Don't talk to her like that, she said. She's my mother. The words were a lifeline, a spark of hope in the darkness. And I clung to them, my eyes burning with unshed tears. James hesitated, his confidence cracking. And then he turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the gravel path. Emily sat back down, her hands trembling, and I sat beside her, my heart full. I'm proud of you, I said softly. You're stronger than I ever was. She didn't respond, but her shoulder brushed mine, a small, unintentional gesture that felt like a promise. We sat in silence, the roses swaying in the breeze, the weight of the truth settling around us. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I'd fight for her, for us, for the family we could still be. The night stretched on, the wedding continuing without us, a world of music and laughter that felt distant and unreal. I looked at Emily, her face illuminated by the moonlight, and I saw the woman she'd become strong, resilient, capable of facing the truth. I love you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond, but her hand found mine, and she squeezed it gently, a silent acknowledgement. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. And for the first time in years, I felt like we could find our way back to each other. The rose garden seemed to hold its breath as Emily and I sat together, her hand still in mine, a fragile thread connecting us through the wreckage of the past. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow on her face, and I saw the weight of the truth settling into her bones. She was quiet, her eyes distant, processing the revelations about her father and the doubts about James. I wanted to fill the silence with promises, with apologies. But I knew she needed time to find her own path through the pain. My heart ached with the need to protect her. But I'd done enough of that too much. Perhaps it had only driven us apart. I don't know how to feel, she said finally, her voice soft, almost lost in the night air. Everything I thought I knew about you, about Dad, about my life, it's all different now. I nodded, my throat tight. I know, I said. I wish I could take it back, rewrite it all. But I can't. All I can do is be here now and tell you the truth. She looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Why now? She asked. Why at my wedding? Why not years ago? The question was a wound, raw and deep, and I owed her an honest answer. Because I was afraid, I said. Afraid of losing you completely. And when I saw James, saw the way he looked at you, the way he controlled things, I couldn't stay silent anymore. She pulled her hand away, her fingers brushing the folds of her gown. You think he's like Dad? She said, her voice flat, like she was testing the words. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I think he's hiding something, I said. I've seen the signs before, charm, control, secrets. I don't want you to go through what I did. She looked away, her hands trembling, and I saw the battle raging inside her, the love she felt for James against the seeds of doubt I'd planted. I need to know, she said finally. I need to see the proof. I nodded, my heart heavy but resolute. I'll help you, I said. Whatever you need, documents, witnesses, anything. We'll find the truth together. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and I saw a flicker of trust, small but real. You do that? She asked, her voice small. After everything. I reached for her hand again, and this time, she let me hold it. You're my daughter, I said, my voice breaking. I'd do anything for you. Her lips trembled, and she looked away, but her grip tightened, a silent promise that we weren't done yet. The sound of footsteps broke the moment, and Sarah appeared, her face etched with concern. Everything okay? She asked, glancing between us. Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. I don't know, she said, but I'm trying. Sarah smiled, a warm, understanding smile, and sat on the bench across from us. You're both stronger than you know, she said. You'll get through this. I looked at her, grateful for her presence, her steadiness. Thank you, I said softly. She nodded, her eyes kind. Go slow, she said. Give her time, but don't give up. Emily stood, smoothing her gown, her face a mix of determination and vulnerability. I need to go back, she said. The guests, they'll be wondering where I am. I stood, my heart pounding with pride and fear. Do you want me to come with you? I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. Not yet, she said. But, don't leave. The words were a lifeline, a fragile hope, and I clung to them. I won't, I said. I'm here. She nodded, her eyes meeting mine for a moment. And then she walked back toward the garden, her silhouette strong against the lights. I watched her go, my heart aching with love and regret. Sarah touched my arm, her voice soft. You did the right thing, she said. It's hard, but it's right. I nodded, my eyes burning. I hope so, I said. I just want her to be okay. Sarah smiled, squeezing my arm. She will be, she said. She's got you. We stood there for a moment, the night wrapping around us, the weight of the truth settling like dust. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I'd fight for Emily, for our family, for the chance to heal. As we walked back to the reception, the music swelled, and I saw Emily standing with James, her face composed but her eyes distant. He was talking, his hand on her arm, but she wasn't leaning into him like before. I saw the doubt in her posture, the strength in her stillness, and I knew she was listening, questioning, searching for the truth. I stayed at the edge of the crowd, watching her, my heart full of hope and fear. I'd exposed the truth, broken her trust, but I'd also given her a chance to see clearly for the first time in years. The night wore on, the guests dancing and laughing, unaware of the storm that had passed. Emily glanced at me once, her eyes unreadable, and I felt a spark of connection, a promise of redemption. I didn't know if she'd forgive me, or if she'd walk away from James, but I knew I'd be there, no matter what. I'd spent years hiding the truth, but now it was out, and we could start again. I took a deep breath, the air cool and sharp, and I made a silent vow to be honest, to be present, to be the mother she deserved. The wedding continued, but for me, it was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild what I'd broken, one truth at a time.